Today we are talking about the must-draft defensemen in fantasy hockey for this upcoming season, whether it's because they're getting slept on in drafts or because I think they are going to have a monster year. I am targeting these guys and I think you should too. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. The first defenseman that we're going to be talking about is none other than Jakob Chychrun of the Ottawa Senators. And I understand I've talked about Jake Sanderson being a potential breakout, and I think he will hit 50 points this season, but I think Jakob Chychrun is the guy that has the highest upside from his ADP, so let's break it down. We just saw Chychrun put up 2 goals in a game winner against the Leafs in their preseason game. Now, this is not why I'm telling you guys to draft Chychrun, it's just preseason, but I will say he looked pretty darn good out there, and it's a promising sign. The reason I'm a big fan of Chychrun is because this guy has a ton of potential. He has one of the best shots as a defenseman in the entire NHL. We saw this in the 2020-2021 season. He put up 18 goals in 56 games, which was an 82 game pace of 26 goals. If you're looking at the scoring settings for Drafters Fantasy Sports, that season, he had the second highest average fantasy points per game among defensemen, only behind Cale Makar. And he did this despite being on one of the worst teams in the Arizona Coyotes. So just imagine how good Chychrun could be if he was on a good team. And now he is. He's on the Ottawa Senators, one of the best offensive teams in the NHL, one of the best power plays in the NHL. And listen, I do want to address a couple of concerns that are completely warranted with Chychrun. The first thing right off the bat is the fact that he's extremely injury prone. I understand this could be a risky pick because he misses like 20 to 30 games every season. He has never played more than 70 games in an NHL season, so it's definitely concerning. I also do want to talk about the fact that he might not be a mainstay on the first unit. They have Thomas Chabot, they have Jake Sanderson. It might be a revolving door of guys on that first unit, which is definitely going to affect Chychrun. I will say that even if he doesn't find himself a mainstay on that first unit, he is still going to have value being on this rising Senators offense. He's still going to put up a lot of points and have big nights, and he puts up amazing peripherals, right? He takes a lot of shots. He's in the upper echelon of defensemen when we're talking about shots. He puts up a lot of blocks as well. He has decent hits, so that is going to give him an edge against some other defensemen. The main reason I'm telling you guys to draft Chychrun is because I think he's a great value right now at his ADP. It's 142.3 on Yahoo right now, and he averaged more fantasy points per game than a lot of defensemen that are going ahead of him in drafts. He averaged more fantasy points per game than Victor Hedman, Noah Dawson, Morgan Riley, Drew Doughty, Chris Letang, Shea Theodore, Vince Dunn. He almost tied fantasy points per game with Mikhail Sergachev. With all that being said, guys, I think it's worth it to take a flyer on Chychrun in those later rounds. He has a lot of upside from his ADP, and if he can manage to stay healthy, it is going to pay off. The next defenseman I want to talk about is Shea Theodore of the Vegas Golden Knights. This guy is extremely solid, and the reason you want to draft him is because his ADP is far too low, especially on Yahoo. His ADP is 142.3, he's going right beside Jakob Chychrun, and let me tell you some defensemen that are going ahead of him. You have guys like Devin Taves, Tyson Barrie, Hampus Lindholm, Aaron Ekblad, Drew Doughty, Brady Shea. How are these players going ahead of Shea Theodore in drafts? It makes absolutely no sense. If you're looking at the last couple of seasons for Shea Theodore, this guy's been extremely solid. He's been a consistent 50 to 60 point player. If we're talking about 82 game pace, he puts up 10 plus goals every season. And last year, he had 8 goals and 41 points in 55 games. That's an 82 game pace of 12 goals and 61 points. The year prior, he had 14 goals and a total of 52 points in 78 games. It's extremely solid numbers, and this guy is just getting slept on. So do yourself a favor and target Shea Theodore in your drafts. He's going to be on the first power play unit on Vegas. He's still a young player, and he's a guy that takes a lot of shots too if your league values those. Very safe floor and definitely upside from his ADP. The next defenseman I want to talk about is Sean Durzi of the Arizona Coyotes, and I will say this, if you're in a league that values plus minus, it might not be the wisest choice to draft Durzi. He is on the Coyotes, and he is a little bit of a defensive liability, so his plus minus might not be great. I'll also say if your league counts hits, he's not very good in that department. His shots and blocks are good, but his hits are not. So if your league heavily values hits, he probably won't have a lot of value either. Now, if you're in any other format, this guy is a massive sleeper in fantasy hockey drafts. You guys can see my player exposures on Drafters Fantasy Sports. Use promo code FIREDUP, click the link in the description. He is on over 40% of the teams that I've drafted. The reason I think he's a sleeper is because he's going to be on that first unit on the Coyotes with emerging superstar Clayton Keller, sleeper Nick Schmaltz, breakout candidate Barrett Hayden, and Logan Cooley might be on there as well, who has looked amazing in the preseason. Durzi can be a defensive liability, but he's going to get much more leeway on the Coyotes than he did on the Kings. He's going to have more ice time. He's going to be on the first unit, a unit that he was not on when he was on the Kings. So for that reason, I think he has the potential to put up 50 plus points and potentially even 60 points, right? Because if you're looking at how he played on the Kings, being on that second unit, he was fantastic. So do yourself a favor, and if you need a defenseman in your later rounds, grab Sean Durzi. The next defenseman you should take a look at in your fantasy hockey drafts is Mike Matheson of the Montreal Canadiens. This is one defenseman that you don't want to tell your friends about because if you're looking at average fantasy points per game, game according to Yahoo default scoring, he had the 18th best fantasy points per game. He averaged more fantasy points per game than Hampus Lindholm, Victor Hedman, Darnell Nurse, Vince Dunn, Noah Dobson, Chris Letang, Thomas Chabot, Rasmus Anderson. The list goes on, and those players are going way ahead of him in drafts. Last season, he only played 48 games due to an injury, but in those 48 games, he put up 8 goals and a total of 34 points. That's an 82 game pace of 13 goals and 58 points. That is amazing. He also shoots the puck a ton. Last year, he had 126 shots in 48 games, and that put him on pace for 215 shots in a full season. So if your league value shots, he's going to have a lot of value there. We've heard great things about Matheson in training camp, and he's a lock to be on that first power play unit with emerging superstar Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, and also a guy that could break out in Kirby Dach. There's a lot of potential, and if he can stay healthy, he has massive upside from his ADP. His ADP on Yahoo is 170.3, so make sure you target this guy in your upcoming fantasy hockey drafts, and I promise you it's going to pay off. The next defenseman that you need to draft is Evan Bouchard of the Edmonton Oilers. This guy was finally able to get on the first unit once Tyson Barrie was moved to Nashville, and he played incredible. In his last 19 regular season games, he was a point per game player. He had 19 points. And in the 12 playoff games he played, he put up 17 points. 15 of these 17 points came from the man advantage, so he is going to benefit so much from being on that first unit. In fact, last season, that power play was the best power play in NHL history. So I expect similar type of numbers for Bouchard going into this season. He's also only 23 years old, so we haven't even seen his ceiling. There's a chance he could take another step forward and level up going into this upcoming season. So I expect massive things from Bouchard. If Bouchard plays 82 games this season, I expect him to put up 65 plus points. He's going to take a lot of shots, and he's going to have decent peripherals as well. So do yourself a favor and target him in your drafts. The next defenseman that you need to target in your upcoming drafts is Zach Werenski of the Columbus Blue Jackets. This might be the biggest sleeper defenseman if we're talking about his ADP on Yahoo. Look where he's going. His ADP on Yahoo is 159.2. He is going behind defensemen like Philip Peronic, Brant Clark, Torrey Krug, Noah Hannafin, Mackenzie Weegar, Cam Fowler, Keandre Miller. This makes absolutely no sense. Even if this guy was going at 120 ADP, I would still say he's a massive sleeper. So you need to target him, especially if you're drafting on Yahoo. People forget how much of a stud Werenski is because he was injured for almost all last season. In the 2019-2020 season, he had 20 goals in 63 games. That's an 82 game pace of 26 goals. He's also a guy that's a lock for 250 plus shots if he plays a full season, so he has so much value. He's going to be on the first unit on Columbus, a team that could get better from last season with guys coming back and being healthy and young players potentially taking a step forward. So I'm super high on Werenski. He has the potential to be a top 10 fantasy hockey defenseman, and he's getting drafted as a 49th defenseman off the board on Yahoo, so you need to draft this guy. The number one defenseman that you're going to want to target in your upcoming fantasy hockey drafts is Miro Heiskanen of the Dallas Stars. Now, if you're in a league that counts hits, he is at a disadvantage. He doesn't put up a lot of hits. However, if you're in any other league format, this guy is a massive value, and let me tell you why. The first reason you should draft Heiskanen is because his ADP on Yahoo is absolutely ridiculous. 68? What are we doing here, guys? He's going as the 9th defenseman off the board behind Charlie McAvoy, behind Quinn Hughes. This makes no sense. This guy has a potential to be a top 5 defenseman this upcoming season, so you are going to get a guy that has massive upside from his ADP. We also know that he's 24 years old in the prime of his career on an amazing Dallas Stars team, and he only broke out last year, so we haven't even seen his true ceiling. At the end of last season, he was putting up some monster numbers, so I'm expecting him going into this season to play even better and potentially put up 80 plus points. Overall, guys, no matter what your league format is, where he's going on Yahoo right now is far too low. In fact, I think Heiskanen is a better fantasy hockey defenseman than Adam Fox in pretty much all formats, so instead of drafting Adam Fox, draft Miro Heiskanen. Alright guys, that's pretty much it. Make sure you hit that like button below if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and my next video will be must draft forwards, so stay tuned for that. I will catch you in the next one.